Welcome back to I Own a Business. I'm your host, Dr. Steve Vargo, and I am joined today by a practice owner who has grown her office sixfold since 2013. Not with overnight success, but with years of small intentional improvements, and she's going to share those strategies with us today. So, welcome to the show, Dr. Mariah Smith.
Hello, thank you for having me.
I think it was Seth Godin who said, "It took me 20 years to become an overnight success." And that always stuck with me. I think people don't see a lot of the early stages. And I think even when doctors in our industry see other practices that are farther along than they are, they don't see all the years of small changes and incremental improvements that those offices made along the way. So I'm really excited to have you on to share your journey because I think that describes your journey. Let's start with the big picture. When you look back over the last 10 plus years that you've had this practice, what do you think contributed most to that sixfold growth?
Well, as you pointed out, I don't think there was any one thing you could attribute it to. I think it was many small little things that we've done year after year after year, and being willing to continually improve and make those changes, not being satisfied with the status quo of just leaving things the way they were, learning more and integrating it. And while that can be frustrating for staff members at times because they have to be willing to adapt with us, those changes are really what has built us into what we are today.
Let's talk about staff for a second, because I know that's a big part of growth. And you start out, I don't know if it was the case when you bought the practice, how many staff you had for a lot of offices, just kind of going into that realm of opening cold. It might just be you and one other person to manage. However, as the practice gets bigger, you've got more people. And a lot of times, what happens, which I'm sure every owner can relate to at some point, is you've got ideas as the owner, as the CEO, but the struggle sometimes is getting other people on board with that vision. Is that anything that you've experienced along the way to be a struggle? And what are some of the ways that you've been able to maybe change course or change direction if you felt like the staff wasn't really on board with what we needed them to do?
Yeah. So I didn't open cold. I started with my partner for many, many years now, but new to me then, Dr. Boren. And it was just he and five other employees. And he was just dipping his toe into the water of having an office manager be one of those five employees. So he didn't even have that at that time. And we've grown to have over 15 employees at this point. And it was just him, running a full-time schedule at that point, to having three doctors now who share time in the office. And Dr. Bourne will still come in and do fill in with us for vacations and time out, which is really appreciated and nice. And we've had, such a long-standing relationship at this point. It's really nice to be able to still connect with him and know that he's doing well. So um, but yeah, no, it was a struggle because when an employee seems to start with you, they have an idea of what the practice is. They get an idea for the pace and the flow and what the expectations are. And if you're an office who's going to continually try to incorporate new things, sometimes employees aren't willing to change what they've gotten used to. Um, and some employees are. And so with those ones, you can grow and they're willing to adapt and evolve with you and collaborate and share ideas. My office manager being one of them, she's been with us for 10 years. But some employees just are, they're great for when you have them, but maybe the changes are too much. People like consistency. And so then there's a changing of seasons and we hire afresh, and those new employees know nothing different except the new changes we have, and they're happy with it. They're fine, having those things be their norm.
Knowing that your practice is built on change, you talk about a lot of the small changes, and that's a focus of what we're talking about today. Is there any process you have in hiring staff to try to identify people that are going to be, let's say, coachable? I read this somewhere. I've seen the data on it that one of the number one reason new hires don't work out is because they're not coachable. You can give them all the tools and training, but they struggle to implement it and they want to sort of maintain that status quo. Just curious what you look for when you hire new people. Again, in a practice, knowing that we're going to change some things. We want to keep growing and developing and advancing, but we need team players with that as well.
Yeah, I wish I could say we had any magic question that we ask, but I think we're just the same as many employers, which is you can't really know from a one-time interview what kind of person that's going to turn out to be. We try to be transparent in our interviews that we are the type of office that changes a lot, and we need somebody who can grow and adapt with us. And everyone's always going to be like, oh yeah, that sounds great, yeah, I can totally roll with that. No one's ever going to say, oh no, I prefer no change ever. And it's only after being with us for our introductory period, that we're like, okay, we know this person is the right kind of person who will adapt, or they don't seem like the right fit.
So, Mariah, you've talked and we talked before about the how a lot of your growth, again, consistent with the theme for today, came through a lot of small changes over the years, not a single breakthrough. Could you share maybe more on a tactical level an example or a couple examples of what some of those small changes were, maybe earlier on, and then we'll get a little bit more into the journey and what you're currently up to.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that comes first to mind when I started with Dr. Boren, things were on a 30-minute schedule for patients, and we had a really cushy lunch of an hour and a half, and that was on purpose so that the staff members could take their lunches on rotation and not be closed during the lunch hour. Um, and now we see patients on a 20-minute schedule, and I think there's a 20 or maybe a 30 or 40-minute lunch there in the middle, and that works a lot better for me. I like running fast. I like a steady pace, and that has allowed us to let's try adding one more patient here. Okay, that worked. Let's try adding another patient. Oh, okay, that worked. Let's try adding another. And so now we can see 20 patients, which is a mix of full and limited exams. But that's substantially more than when we started, which was about 10 patients a day. Um, and then, from that, we've added more practitioners. So we've made more exam lanes. When I started with Dr. Bourne, there was really 2 to 3 functioning exam rooms. And then maybe 5 years in, we're like, you know what, let's make this storage room an exam room. And it worked great. And then we're like, you know what, let's cut the pre-testing room in half and make that an extra exam room. And that really helps our efficiency to be able to have those extra exam rooms, because the doctor can bounce back and forth between 2 rooms, and then that 5th room, it can be a flex for the dilation who's waiting, and the add-on foreign body who needs to be seen by whoever's next available. Those extra rooms, I don't think people give it enough value on how the pace, the efficiency is improved by having those extra rooms.
One of the benefits that I think goes underrated for any business that has that approach of continuously improving is not just from the standpoint of we're always doing something that's adding value, but we're learning along the way. And something I've came to learn and really appreciate is definitely not unique to optometry, but any business. A lot of the successful businesses that you look at is really ultimately a culmination of a lot of failures along the way.
Mm-hmm.
But they weren't afraid to try things and take risk and learn and grow to the point where there's actually a lot of companies out there that have almost an intentional approach to experimentation, knowing that a lot of things are going to fail. So instead of having some big, massive workup where they try to get everything just right, and then this big release of some new strategy or some new product, rather they take they always treat it like experimentation on a small scale. We've got this idea. We don't know if it's going to work. It could fail. Let's try it on a small scale. And interestingly, a lot of these companies find that 80% of their ideas fail, but they do the 20%, and it makes them look great. But I think that's a wise approach, because otherwise you think of putting all these resources and time and money into something that's never going to work out. Have you intentionally approached things that way, or have you just found, if nothing else, maybe looking back on the years, yeah, that's something that we can definitely relate to?
Yeah, I mean, I can't say we intentionally approached failure intending to fail, but certainly we failed in things, and that have been our tests over the years. When our in-house biller went to real estate, we had to find a new solution for billing, and so we outsourced it. And that was a huge failure. It wasn't one of the big billing groups that optometry knows well. We had picked one that does more medical billing. But because they had no familiarity with optometric billing, man, there was a huge loss there after finding out that they could not swim with us. And so we had to divert, find a new solution. one success story was when I started with Dr. Warren, a lot of things were run through VSP, whether it was medical or not. And I know some people will kind of giggle at that, like, why would you ever do that? But it was just the mom and pop setup, and that's the way it had always been done, and it was working well. So we really, in the last couple of years here, try to medical is medical. Vision is, a wellness visit. When there's an ability to coordinate benefits and do both in the same day, great. But I think a lot of offices don't do coordination of benefits, or maybe don't use the medical insurance for a medical complaint, as we did way back when. And that has been a huge win in being able to be compensated more fairly for our services. It will take a few years for the patient perception, for the existing patients to be like, well, why can't everything go through my VSP insurance? But it's, I think, the way it's supposed to be done, and monetarily that will be a huge growth for our office to do things that way. But we've also had to add an extra staff member whose job is to pull insurance benefits and really give us the lay of the land before the patient is seen, so we know what cards we have at table before we see the patient. If we're out of network in medical and they need a glaucoma workup, we can offer for them to do it in-house with us at cash pay, or we can refer them out to somebody who's in network. Or if we can COB on the same day, coordination of benefits, great, let's take care of it all. Or if COB is not allowed and we have a wellness insurance we're in network with and a medical insurance we're in network with, all right, let's do your wellness exam today, and we'll bring you back for the high risk medication monitoring that you need in a month.
When we talked before, I know one of the things you talked about was distancing yourself somewhat. You haven't completely gotten away from vision plans, but you dropped certain vision plans and took
Mhm.
on more medical. And is that's something a lot of doctors want to do more of, but I think they fear, will my patients come back? Will I lose too many of my patients? How did you communicate that? And I know you don't have to go super detailed, because I know when I've talked to offices, we've actually done a couple hour-long podcasts just on that topic, how to create the messaging and how to get the staff on board, and a lot of work put into making sure that you're ready to do it. But any overarching suggestions or advice for an office looking to maybe drop some vision plans and get more involved on the medical side?
Yeah, I mean, we're only in network with one vision plan now, and one of the big two players that we dropped maybe 5 or 7 years ago. We looked at how far we were booked out. We looked at what the reimbursement rate is. How does that compare to the average, or what we would like to be the average reimbursement that we're getting for patient? And we said, all right, let's test it. And it was scary, because they accounted for maybe not 50% of our revenue, but somewhere close to. And the first year or two, I think everybody was kind of biting their nails and nervous to see how it would play out. And maybe the schedule was a little bit patchier, but those patients who have left us, obviously not all of them, some of them just really want what their insurance is going to do, but a lot of them came back to us, and decided that we were worth paying out of pocket for, or submitting as an out of network reimbursement with their vision plan, because they appreciated the care they had received with us. Um, the communications. So we didn't do like a broad announcement to our patient base. What we wanted to do was be able to have a conversation with the patients as they rolled in. So we prepped our staff with, okay, when a patient calls in and they have this insurance, and even to this day, this is what I'd like them to do, and they're out of network, what do you say? Okay, so we're out of network with that insurance plan, but we'd love to still see you. Here's our pricing. We can submit you with a super bill that you can submit to your insurance to get partial reimbursement. There's no guarantee on what that reimbursement is, but your insurance probably has it laid out somewhere. And I want the patient to know we still would love to see them, even though they're out of network. I think it's easy to shut down when we're like, oh, we're out of network. Best of luck finding someone who's in network. Bye bye. But that's not how I want the conversation to go. But that way we can have a dialogue with the patient for each patient and give them that choice. Whereas if they got an email that said, hey, we're out of network with your insurance now, that might be the end of the conversation. That might be a period mark. And we wanted it to be a dialogue.
Yeah, I think it has to be very intentional, because the patient might see that and think, well, okay, you don't take my insurance anymore, you don't take me anymore. But I will tell you, and if this gives anybody a sense of optimism who's thinking about doing this, the story that you told, I've heard from a lot of doctors that said, we were really nervous, biting our nails. Not everybody stayed, but more stayed than we thought, and a lot of them did come back. And I think that's something that any office should be looking at, even if you're not ready to drop a vision plan or vision plans, is approaching your office every day as we're going to deliver the kind of care that's going to build that loyalty. So if it makes sense in our practice with our patient base at some point to drop a plan or plans, we'll have done everything we can to build that loyalty in the practice. And it's usually those offices that will tell me that not as many people left as we thought, and a lot of them came back because they missed the level of service and care that we got, which is probably a good transition into. I know we talked before, you talked about technology being a big differentiator for your office. What are some things that you've invested in over the years that have had a real impact on the level of care that you're able to provide?
Yeah, I mean, the automated phoropters, I know some people have a bias against them, but I think in terms of an efficiency standpoint, it's great because it auto populates the numbers from our autorefractor. The numbers automatically go into our practice management, so there's no transcription errors. It's quicker. And I love having my little program where I can do simultaneous presentation of choice A and B. The patient can sit there and analyze it more. We used a SparkMe, which is like a digital measuring device for progressives and Panto and optical. And while that maybe doesn't help efficiency, there is a patient perception of, ooh, it's a high tech kind of office. We're not just scribbling on my lenses with a ruler and a dot. We added an instant messaging system, and we use Slack, which is a well known company and it's free. There's subscription ones you can pay for that make it fancier, but we use the basic free one. And that was a huge game changer because communicating with these staff members now, when we have 15 of them in an ongoing way, things can get lost. We don't want, if you need an answer right now from either the doctor who's in the room with the patient or the person who's checking out up front, or the optician needs a different prescription finalized, all of our staff members are signed into the same thread and reading the same message simultaneously. So anybody who's available can try to help remedy that problem, or get that communication, or come out in optical and help the backlog of people, or step into front desk and help them. Because we try to have cross training as much as we can. So that was a big one that helped efficiency and communication and making sure loose ends are tied. Um, we added an eaglet, which is a surface profiler, and it's really for us for scleral fittings. We use it for orthokeratology as well, but for sclerals, it's been a game changer in terms of chair time for the patient too. It can make a 3D custom print scleral now, and so the amount of time I have to spend doing fine-tuned fitting changes with the patient is significantly reduced. Um, yeah, we have an online scheduling system. That's been a huge change too, because when people want to call and schedule an appointment, it's at 8 p.m. at night when I'm after I put my kids to bed. I'm not going to remember at 9 a.m. tomorrow when I'm at work seeing patients. So having that has been a huge help as well.
I think it's really important too that the things you talk about improving efficiency, that the staff understands that these things benefit them as well. Because I found that when you seems like maybe the staff's perception is that things are being forced upon them. As you mentioned before, what is it? The seven most dangerous words in business. We have always done it this way. Well, we got to get past that. That's not sustainable, but making sure that staff understand how this benefits them as well. The things you're talking about can be an incredible enhancement on efficiency. So, would you agree with that? That approaching staff saying, "Hey, we got some changes, some things we need to do differently," but making sure that we plant the why in there, how it benefits the practice, the patients, but them as well, because a lot of times they stand to gain from these things.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, there's not a lot to add to that because that's clear as day that having the staff buy in and having them realize the why of it is always going to make it an easier transition, not only for them following through because they might get stuck in the water if they don't know the why about it, doing it the way they had before because they don't see what the value is. And if you can get their buy in, then amazing.
Culture is a big focus for you as well. because we want to make sure, as with any practice, any business, that we're retaining the people that we want to retain, and it's the kind of workplace that people come to and they're motivated, they want to do a good job, they're on board with the changes, good leadership in place. Can you speak to the kind of culture that you create? Any benefits? How do you remain competitive? Because there's a lot of practices as well that will say it's gotten competitive out there. Even the employees that we wouldn't have kept before now are wanting a lot more money, and we're feeling the strain of it's hard to find people. It's just a different overall environment.
Yeah, well, and when the office is making more money, we can offer our employees a higher wage, which obviously is going to help with retention. But I really do think the culture is important too. I can't take full credit for some of these because a couple of them, Dr. Bourne started before he left full time work with us. So he piloted the 401k offering that we have for our employees. And granted, not all of them take us up on it, but because I think there's a lot of young people in the beginning of their career who don't see the value in the 401k, but the employees who are more mature in their career path, they're like, oh yeah, great, 401k. And Dr. Boren also piloted the health insurance that we're offering our employees, and it's optional. They don't have to sign up for it. Again, we have a lot of young people who are on either their parents' insurance plan or even Medicaid if they choose to, and they want to retain those benefits. But for those who want to opt in, obviously it's nice to have an employer sponsored insurance program. We have always celebrated birthdays like by bringing a cake, and we try to make it a group effort. Actually, we have the employees assigned to each other to be responsible for their birthday that day, and there's some friendship and again camaraderie kind of built around that. We celebrate their work anniversaries, which we never did before, but now that we have some employees who've been with us 10, 7 years, those anniversaries are really more important and sentimental. We try to have a holiday party every year, and we've been doing more little summer parties and quarterly things coming up. We have an employee who, has a medical condition, so we're doing the walk to help that medical condition. And food. Employees always love food, so we're doing lunches and breakfasts, and food always makes people happy. Oh, and we started doing the CPO certification for our staff members, and that's been really cool too. For a while, it's kind of like you have to have the right group who's interested, but our group right now was so enthusiastic about it. They all wanted to do the CPO certification together at the same time. So we got behind it. We're like, yeah, like let's close the office for a couple hours. We'll do it once a week and we'll all study together, and the doctors will be there to help you guys answer questions and learn. And they loved it. And they all passed their test when the time came. It was just a couple months ago. But it was really the enthusiasm of the group. And there have been times where we had staff members who just weren't, as a group, enthused about it. So this was really cool. They love having regular check-ins with the doctor. If they worked up a patient and it was an interesting one or something was quirky, if we can circle back to them and tell them why XYZ happened or what the diagnosis was and a little bit about it, they appreciate that they're being invested in and that you want them to know about the things that they're seeing in their knowledge base. It lets us show that we care about them and their growth, and people like it when they can learn and grow in their workspace and know that they're helping people. Um, but making that time is we have to remember to do that, to make the time to go check in with them and tell them these things. It's easy to get tied up in the other tasks and responsibilities that eat our time up and overlook that, but making that time is really appreciated.
And it's so important, the culture side. And we talked before about how a lot of businesses approach things from I would say an experimentation standpoint. I think you can say the same for staff as well. A lot of times, and you alluded to it, I've heard from owners that said, we put all this effort into doing this thing for the staff and nobody seemed like they even appreciated it. But we do this other thing and everybody's really excited and motivated. So I think it's important to pay attention, experiment with those things as well. Just try. And sometimes you might not get that high excitement level out of your staff, but learn what resonates with them and what doesn't. And I think that'll help you from a leadership standpoint in creating a workplace, an environment, special events, or whatever it is that are going to really resonate with the team. Um, Mariah, a couple policies, and again, we were talking about some of these things before, and just in the process of uncovering different things that you've tried to address problems, come up with solutions, maybe just change things for the sake of trying something different. But a couple were changing policies, which is always good to, I think, stay on top of those. Our policies make sense anymore? Maybe something that made sense 2 years ago doesn't make sense anymore. One of these I'm going to mention I used to be sort of against, and I've sort of come around to. Um, that would be credit card surcharges. I know more offices are doing that now. I I used to think it seemed petty or just raise your fees, but I get it now. I get it why businesses don't want to be stuck with all those charges. And the other thing is you guys charge now for missed appointments. So two things that some offices struggle with. Is it okay to do this? Should we? Are my patients going to be mad? How have those things worked out in your practice?
Yeah, and so I know these two are pretty polarizing. You're either okay with it or not, and obviously what we're doing is not going to work for everybody. And the environment we're in, it seems more accepted here, whereas in other communities it might not be as accepted. And so, I don't want to. I know it's a polarizing topic, but for the 3% surcharge, we started that about a year and a half ago, and honestly, we expected there to be some sort of disgruntled, ness about it, but it really has been pretty smooth. Um, Increasing fees across the board didn't really make sense because with a VSP copay, I mean, it is what it is. It's a flat rate. There's no way to change that for when the patient was coming in and just paying their copays. But it has encouraged our patients to use their debit card, which doesn't have that transaction fee or pay in cash or pay with check. And as a small locally owned business, that really has made a huge difference in our bottom line. And then for the missed appointment fee, I mean, we're not trying to make money off of that. And my staff has ultimate power to show grace in writing it off. But there are certain patients who are just repeat offenders and continually not showing to their appointment. And so we're using it more as behavior modification. If a patient does give us, the benefit of calling and saying, "Hey, I have an appointment in like 3 hours. I'm just not going to be able to make it." And we're like, "Oh, okay. Just there might be this appointment missed fee. We have a 24-hour business notice, 24-hour business hours notice to let us know." And they're like, "Oh, you know what? I'll just come. I'll just come. I'll make it work." And they're like, "Oh, okay. Well, great. We would love to see you." So it's worked out well for us, and it has made a big difference in our no-show rate. And I've heard the arguments that, well, it will deter people from wanting to come see you, it'll deter patients from scheduling you with you, and that might be true. And again, it might not work for every office, and I get the arguments for not having it. But for us, it really has made a difference in our no-show rate. And I guess my counter argument would be, well, maybe the people who don't feel confident in being able to make an appointment with you and don't want to schedule with you because they're worried about missing that appointment or not being able to give you notice is maybe not the kind of patient you want to have be a repeat customer with you.
Yeah, and I think fairly enough that practices look at it through that filter as well in terms of trying to create policies and create an environment that's going to attract the kind of patients that they want. And yeah, I like the approach of giving grace and giving your staff the ability. Things happen. Sometimes people just can't make it. They have a valid excuse, but I'm paying more attention now to some of these policies that years ago I might have been like, maybe not. It's just cost of doing business where environments changed and profit margins have shrunk, and we've got to stay on top of some of these things that are can erode at the profit margins even more. And chronic missed appointments, credit card charges, and things like that are certainly something that I think requires some kind of a reaction from a business standpoint.
It is
You,
interesting how you can have like a salon or a nail person or a massage place. If you don't cancel within X amount of hours, they're going to charge you the full cost of the service for that missed appointment. It seems weird that we would be frowned upon for having, something that was even a fraction of a similar policy.
yeah. You know where else this comes up, and I don't know what your take on this is on having I don't maybe mandatory is too strong of a word, but when patients come in having additional testing that's required, and I
Mm-hmm.
think maybe one of the more obvious one is a retinal photo. We just require it on everybody. This came up at a recent a dinner meeting recently, and the doctor made a good point. She said we really haven't had a pushback to begin with. At least she goes, not that I've heard, but she goes, I go to my pediatrician, I go to my other doctors, and they just tell me what I need, and I don't argue it. It's just part of the testing. And it's another area where I think some doctors worry that, well, patients aren't going to, they're not going to understand that. But in her case, she really hasn't gotten much pushback at all from it.
Yeah, I mean, we are having the Optimap be done annually on our patients, and we consider it part of our standard of care. And we were actually doing, and again, people are going to laugh at this, but whatever. We're living and learning. I'll share our mistakes. We were doing the Optimap just for free on everybody for a number of years. When COVID started, it was our best way of getting good retinal views when we were trying to be in and out and not dilating patients as routinely because everyone was concerned about what was going to happen. And so we just started doing Optimap on everybody at no cost and carried that on for a number of years. And then it was like, all right, we're paying for this really expensive piece of equipment. There's a cost of upkeep on it. We need to start doing things uh, at a cost again. But we had really learned the value of it when we were doing it on everybody every time because there's so many little things that are hard to catch when you're looking at it in your own eyes and you can't zoom in and zoom out and compare old to new. Um, the old to new is really helpful, even if they had three normal Optimaps in the past and something new is coming in today, and you're like, oh gosh, it's so subtle. Is that really there? And you can go back and see, well, yeah, it is. It certainly wasn't there the last time they came in. So we are including it in our annual exams as part of our standard of care. And patients can choose to go to offices who don't require that. But we really see the value in it. And we are, again, allowing for a write off one time if a patient is upset by that. But then we have the opportunity to show them what amazing technology it is and onboard them for what the expectations can be next year.
Which I think is also a good example of building a practice and targeting the kind of patient that you want. And I think in examples like these, confidence is the most important thing. Just being confident that you really believe this is in the best interest of the patient. I've seen practices get too bogged into trying to explain or over explain the fees or how the equipment's really expensive and we need to charge a higher fee. I think the best way to resonate with the patient is just to be very confident that this is the standard of care that we feel like we need to provide. We want to provide the best care. We've found that we could potentially miss things that we don't want to miss, and just stand behind it. I don't think you need to feel the need to overly defend your fees or anything like that. I don't know if patients really care what our profit margins on that are. That's kind of our problem, not their problem, or what the equipment costs. But and I think in that case, the feedback I get is most patients are fine with it once it's explained to them and they understand it's in their best interest. One more question for you, because this is always something that doctors are looking for as well, is referrals from other doctors. And I've seen doctors have success with this, and others can't even get in the front door of another. They get shot down in the process of handing cookies to the receptionist. They can't even get a conversation with the doctor. But you seem to have some success with other PCPs in your area, and kind of positioned your practice as you describe it as sort of a go-to practice for the ocular emergencies. How have you done that?
Yeah, and I mean, I'd like to think of us that way. I don't know how many other offices they're referring people to, but we do seem to have urgent care and even the ER calling us not infrequently to see their patients. And I think a lot of them feel uncomfortable with eyes, so they're perfectly happy to have somebody like us to help triage it, even if we're not going to be the end stop for that patient. If they're having a retinal problem or a corneal problem, we might still have to refer them to the higher level care, but we can triage them better than urgent care or ER often can. And I mean, I have a little bit of, I'm from Reno, so I know a lot of people from Reno and a lot of classmates or just people that I've met through interactions in my lifetime who've gone into the medical realm. And I'm like, oh, hey, like, would you be interested in taking this flyer and like maybe posting it in the doctor's break room of what we can provide, what kind of things we are willing to see, so that they can know we're around and they can call us and they can send things to us when they don't want to have the sty or the red eye thing that they're uncertain about. And they're like, oh, yeah, absolutely. And they'll take a stack of business cards. I haven't really gone into as many offices with just a tray of cookies and some business cards and asked for a meeting with the doctor. Um, we've done that with a couple of the hospitals that are around us, and urgent cares not to ask for time with the doctor, but just be like, hey, we're right next door. Like, if you think of us, here we are. But it's really been those personal connections that have allowed us to maybe get our name out there as somebody willing to see these emergencies, and being in network with more medical insurances that helps a lot too.
Well, Dr. Smith, this has been great. Thanks so much for your time. I wanted to give you an opportunity to speak to somebody who's maybe much earlier on in their journey. You know, there's that phrase that goes, don't compare your chapter 2 to somebody else's chapter 14 or something like that. If a younger, let's say OD starting out approached you and was just getting started, what advice would you give them? You being farther along in your career and farther along in your success, what would you tell them to give them maybe the fortitude and because there's going to be a lot of downs. It's any business ownership. There's ups, there's downs, there's peaks, there's valleys, but just to kind of hang in there, what would your advice be?
Yeah, well, to stick with the theme of the day, I mean, don't be afraid of change, and every little change that you think might be worthwhile, why not give it a shot? And if it works, amazing. And if it doesn't work, okay, we learned. But to keep looking for changes and how to improve and how to get that efficiency, because it all adds up slowly, little bit by little bit, to make a bigger impact 10 years down the road. Yes, that sounds like a long time, but it's way easier to take little bit by little bit and little change by little change. And then all of a sudden you're in a different place when you look back.
Yeah, the topic resonated with me because there's something that I've noticed for years. It's not just optometrists, but whenever I talk to somebody who's achieved a high level of success in their field and ask them, how they did it, a lot of times they start telling you about all the things they failed at. And I came to realize that the main thing that they've done differently is they kept trying. They took risks. They tried new things. They learned from it. They didn't have it all figured out. They kind of figured it out as they went along. So I think that's one of the most important things is just keep iterating, keep experimenting, keep learning, and keep growing from that. And I think your trajectory is going to be a lot higher than the practices that kind of play it safe and they don't take a lot of risks. I mean, I can't take credit for this statement, but I heard somebody once say that the riskiest thing you could do is play it safe. You almost guarantee that you're not going to achieve your goals. So I think there's probably a lot of truth to that. So, Dr. Mariah Smith, thank you so much for your time. And maybe we'll have you back on in 5 years and you can tell us about all the changes you made between now and then.
Sounds great. I'd be happy to. Thanks for having me.
All right. Well, thanks so much, Dr. Smith. And thanks everyone for listening. We'll see you in the next episode.